The rock and metal world has just been hit with devastating news. A man whose riffs helped power one of the loudest and most rebellious bands in history is gone. Legendary Motörhead guitarist Phil Campbell has died at the age of 64, leaving behind a legacy that stretches across more than 3 decades of thunderous rock and roll. The heartbreaking announcement came earlier today through a statement from his family and his band, Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons. According to the message, Phil passed away peacefully following a long and incredibly difficult battle that required intensive care after a complex major operation. Those closest to him described him as far more than just a rock legend. They spoke about the man behind the guitar, a devoted husband, a loving father, and a proud grandfather whose family meant everything to him. For fans around the world, the news came as a shock. Just weeks ago, Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons had quietly cancelled several upcoming tour dates across Australia and Europe. At the time, no detailed explanation was given, and most fans simply assumed it was a routine health issue or scheduling problem. Now we know the truth. Behind the scenes, Phil was fighting a much more serious battle, one that very few people outside his inner circle knew about. Almost immediately after the news broke, tributes began pouring in from across the music world. Musicians, producers, and fans alike began sharing stories about the guitarist who helped define Motörhead's sound for more than 30 years. One of the most emotional messages came from Motörhead drummer Mickey D, who described Campbell as not just a bandmate, but a brother. Mickey recalled the countless years they spent on the road together, the chaos, the laughter, and the unforgettable moments that come with life in one of the loudest bands ever formed. In his tribute, he called Phil the funniest guy he had ever known and one of the best rock guitar players he had ever shared a stage with. His message ended with a line that struck fans deeply: "Sleep well, my friend and rock soldier." Motörhead's official social media accounts also shared a heartfelt statement, saying the band was devastated by the loss. They honored Phil's 31 years in Motörhead, pointing out that he was the longest-serving member of the band aside from the legendary Lemmy Kilmister himself. They described him as a brilliant guitarist, an incredible songwriter, and a man whose energy and personality brought light to everyone around him. And that description fits perfectly, because Phil Campbell wasn't just another guitar player in a famous band. He was a major part of what made Motörhead so powerful. Born in Wales, Phil joined Motörhead in 1984 after the departure of guitarist Brian Robertson. It was a moment that would quietly shape the next era of the band. From the second he stepped into that lineup, Campbell brought something special, a combination of raw rock and roll swagger mixed with the heavy punch Motörhead fans expected. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, he became the band's driving riff machine, helping create the aggressive sound that defined albums like August Matron, 1916, and Bastards. Those records didn't just maintain Motörhead's reputation, they strengthened it. Phil's playing style was unique. While Motörhead was often labeled a heavy metal band, Campbell himself always resisted that description. He saw what he did as rock and roll first. His riffs had grit, groove, and attitude. They weren't about flashy solos or technical showmanship. They were about power, feeling, and energy. And that approach worked perfectly with Lemmy's bass and vocals. Together with drummer Mickey D, the trio became one of the tightest and most relentless power trios in rock history. Night after night, they delivered performances that were loud, fast, and completely uncompromising. By the early 2000s, Campbell had become the sole guitarist in Motörhead, carrying the band's massive sound on his shoulders. For the final 2 decades of Motörhead's career, that role made him an even bigger part of the band's identity. Then in 2015, everything changed. When Lemmy Kilmister passed away in December of that year, Motörhead officially came to an end. For many fans, it felt like the closing chapter of an era. The band had become a symbol of raw, unapologetic rock and roll, and without Lemmy, there simply was no Motörhead. But Phil Campbell wasn't finished with music. Not even close. Instead of stepping away, he decided to keep playing, and he did it in a way that felt deeply personal. He formed a new band called Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons, bringing 3 of his sons into the lineup: Todd, Dane, and Tyler. For Phil, this wasn't just another band. It was family. Together they began touring, writing new music, and proving that the Campbell rock legacy was very much alive. The band quickly built its own following, mixing classic Motörhead energy with fresh material and a powerful family dynamic on stage. Phil also released a solo record titled Old Lion Still Roar, which featured collaborations with a wide range of musicians from the rock and metal world. The album showed that even after decades in the industry, Campbell still had creativity and passion burning inside him. Fans loved seeing him continue. It felt like the spirit of Motörhead was still out there, still loud, still proud, still refusing to fade quietly. That's why today's news hit so hard. Phil Campbell wasn't just a legendary guitarist from the past. He was still active, still touring, still creating, still inspiring. For younger fans discovering Motörhead for the first time, his riffs became the gateway into one of the most influential bands in heavy music history. For long-time followers who had seen the band live over the years, Campbell represented something deeper, the relentless spirit of rock and roll itself. He was never flashy about his achievements. In interviews, Phil often joked about how many people didn't realize just how many of Motörhead's riffs he had written. While Lemmy was the unmistakable face of the band, Campbell quietly helped shape much of its musical backbone. That humility only made fans respect him more. Because in the end, Phil Campbell represented something that's becoming rarer in modern music: authenticity. He wasn't chasing trends. He wasn't trying to reinvent himself to stay relevant. He was simply playing loud rock and roll the way he always had, honest, raw, and full of life. And now, that life has come to an end far too soon. Phil Campbell leaves behind his wife, his children, his grandchildren, and a musical legacy that will continue to echo through speakers for generations to come. From the roaring stages of Motörhead's world tours to the family-driven energy of Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons, his career stands as proof of what happens when passion, talent, and dedication collide. The guitars may be quieter tonight, but the music he helped create will never fade. Rest in peace, Phil Campbell. Your riffs will live forever. But if you talk to the people who actually worked with Phil Campbell, the stories they tell aren't just about the music. They're about the man himself. Over the years, bandmates and crew members repeatedly described him as one of the most down-to-earth musicians in rock. Despite performing in front of massive crowds around the world and playing on albums that became staples of heavy music, Phil never carried himself like a rock star in the stereotypical sense. Friends say he was approachable, funny, and incredibly loyal to the people around him. That sense of humor became legendary on tour. Motörhead's life on the road was known for being chaotic, loud, and unpredictable, but through all of it, Phil was often the one keeping the mood light. Former bandmates frequently recalled nights on tour buses where Campbell's jokes and storytelling would have everyone laughing long after the shows had ended. It's easy to forget just how intense those tours were. Motörhead wasn't a band that played occasionally. They toured relentlessly for decades. Long stretches of travel, back-to-back shows, and the physical demands of performing that kind of high-energy music night after night would wear down almost anyone. But Phil thrived in that environment. Fans who saw Motörhead live will remember the sound immediately. The moment the band stepped on stage, everything felt like it was moving at full speed. Lemmy's bass thundered through the speakers, Mickey D's drums hit like cannon fire, and Phil Campbell's guitar cut through it all with razor-sharp riffs. It wasn't just loud. It was powerful. And what made those performances special was the chemistry between the three musicians. They weren't just playing songs. They were locked into something that felt bigger than any one individual. Phil often talked about that bond in interviews. He said that once the band stepped onto the stage, everything else disappeared. No matter what had happened during the day, no matter how exhausting the schedule had been, the moment the music started, it all made sense again. For Motörhead fans, those concerts became legendary experiences. Crowds knew they weren't just seeing a band. They were witnessing a force of nature. And through all those years, Phil Campbell stood right there at the center of it, delivering the riffs that kept the engine running. When Motörhead finally came to an end after Lemmy's death in 2015, many people assumed that would be the last chapter of Campbell's career. After all, losing the frontman of a band like Motörhead changes everything. It's hard to imagine continuing without that central figure. But Phil saw things differently. Instead of walking away, he chose to keep moving forward. Forming Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons allowed him to continue doing what he loved while also bringing something new into his life, sharing the stage with his own children. For fans who attended those shows, there was something special about seeing Phil up there with his sons. The music was still loud, still aggressive, still packed with that unmistakable Motörhead attitude. But there was also a sense of family pride and connection that made those performances feel different. Phil wasn't just a rock legend anymore. He was a father passing his love of music to the next generation. And audiences could feel it. Those concerts often included classic Motörhead songs alongside new material, creating a bridge between the past and the future. Longtime fans would come for the nostalgia, but they often left impressed by the energy of the new band. Phil clearly still had plenty of fire left. That's another reason why today's news feels so heavy. At 64, Campbell was still actively touring, still recording, still proving that age had not slowed him down. In an industry where many musicians step back as the years go by, Phil continued doing what he always had, turning up the volume and stepping onto the stage. And maybe that's the way fans will remember him best. Not as someone who faded quietly into retirement, but as someone who kept playing until the very end. The tributes continuing to pour in from musicians across the world show just how deep his influence ran. Younger guitarists often pointed to Campbell's work as a blueprint for how to combine heavy metal intensity with classic rock groove. His riffs helped shape countless bands that followed. Even artists from outside the metal world have spoken about the respect they had for Motörhead's uncompromising attitude and the musicians who built that sound. And Phil Campbell was a huge part of that foundation. For over 30 years, he helped define what Motörhead sounded like. His guitar work drove songs that became anthems for fans who loved music that was loud, fast, and unapologetic. But perhaps his greatest legacy isn't just the music itself. It's the spirit behind it. Motörhead always represented something bigger than just songs or albums. The band stood for authenticity, for doing things your own way, for refusing to follow trends or compromise your sound to please anyone. Phil Campbell carried that philosophy throughout his entire career. He played the music he believed in. He stayed loyal to his bandmates. And he stayed connected to the fans who supported him from the beginning. That's why his loss feels personal to so many people today. Because when someone like Phil Campbell passes away, it's not just a musician we lose. It's a piece of the history of rock and roll itself. The stages he stood on may eventually fall silent. But the sound of those riffs, the ones that powered Motörhead for more than 3 decades, will continue to blast from speakers all over the world. And every time that guitar kicks in, fans will remember the man who helped create it. Phil Campbell may be gone, but the music he gave the world will never die. Rest in peace, Phil Campbell. And before we come to the end of this video, I just want to take a moment to say a very big thank you to all of you for watching. Your time truly means a lot. In a world where there are thousands of videos you could be watching right now, the fact that you chose to spend a few minutes here with me on Hajararama TV is something I truly appreciate. This channel continues to grow because of viewers like you. Every view, every comment, and every bit of support helps this community become stronger. And that's what makes creating these videos so rewarding. If you enjoyed this video, please take a quick moment to like the video, leave a comment below, and share it with your friends or anyone who might enjoy this content. Your interaction really helps the channel reach more people who love stories, entertainment, and updates just like you do. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Hajararama TV, and turn on the notification bell so you'll always be among the first to know when a new video is uploaded. There are many more exciting videos coming your way very soon, and I would love for you to be part of this journey as the channel continues to grow. I also enjoy hearing your thoughts, so feel free to drop your opinions, ideas, or suggestions in the comment section. Your voice matters here, and your feedback helps make Hajararama TV even better. Once again, thank you so much for watching and for being part of this amazing community. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, stay entertained, and keep watching Hajararama TV.